Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop. Today we are going to talk about the development of the scandal related to Hearthstone boards. We managed to collect very interesting data to complete the picture of what is happening.
The implementation of the strategy of reducing resources to support the game has already had serious consequences for Hearthstone. The game is rapidly heading towards the abyss, and this is not clickbait.
The end is coming!
We have reason to believe that the players ran out of patience, and without any boycotts they severely punished the management of the game. But despite the black clouds hanging over Hearthstone, there is a ray of hope for unprecedented positive changes. We have done a lot of work and we ask you to subscribe to our channel in advance and most importantly hit the bell button, because in the next few weeks we are going to announce important news that could change Hearthstone forever.
But let's start the story at the beginning. Hearthstone's 10th anniversary consists of a string of extremely terrible decisions. During Blizzard's transition to Microsoft, the developers removed Fireside Gathering from Hearthstone, then Duels mode disappeared. Blizzard also took away the Diamond card as a reward for collecting to instead sell it in the store. There was also a decrease in rewards for gameplay achievements. Early access to the card was first introduced at the beginning of the game year, which caused a ton of outrage in the community. For the first time in years, a roadmap was not released. The drama of weekly quests took a separate place on this list. Blizzard slightly increased the rewards for quests but increased their difficulty several times. After protest pressure from players, the developers were forced to abandon their idea. The last straw was first the reduction of animation quality in the cinematics for the Whizbang expansion, and then the complete disappearance of the cinematics for the new Perils in Paradise expansion. In addition to this, for the first time the new expansion did not receive a theme board and new music. For whatever reason, management decided that the traditional things that had been a part of the game for 10 years were no longer important to players.
There is a clear strategy of Hearthstone management. They're stripping away everything unnecessary and turning familiar things into new ways of monetization.
This year we got a new Duos mode for Battlegrounds, the development of which probably took a long time and was carried out in parallel with the support of Duels mode. So we can conclude that support of other things did not prevent the team from creating something really large scale. But for some reason since the beginning of this year their capabilities have significantly decreased. Yes, Arena will get some secret improvements but they won't happen until early next year. But making some things better is not innovation, but rather expected support. The disappearance of the theme board seemed like complete nonsense, which many players refused to believe. All officials refused to comment on this fact until the release of the expansion. The situation became clear only 3 days after the release of Perils in Paradise. We assume that this is not a coincidence. The first few days after the release of the expansion players spent a record amount of money on purchases. The long silence and delay with the explanation indirectly indicates that the developers clearly understood that the new approach will not be accepted by the community.
Behind the huge cloud of meaningless words with explanations, there were only a few thoughts. Once again, the developers apologized and promised to listen to the voices of the community and also announced only one free board per year. So most likely the Whizbang board will be the only one this year. They will create personalization tools, allowing you to choose your favorite board including from the past. Instead of creating free boards, the developers have focused their efforts on creating pets. Despite being verbose, many points are very tentatively worded. We can only assume that the new boards will be better and they will become new items in the store. We haven't received any concept art that sheds light on what it might look like. In the post in which the developers promised to be open, they are skimpy on details and present information about new things in a very tentative way. They try to convince people that bad things are actually good. The mundane board selection function is presented as something unique.
Please understand us correctly, we don't have a goal of creating hatred for Blizzard. Yes, I am very angry not because the free board is gone, but because Blizzard continues to cause irreparable damage to the game. We were prepared for this. We even warned our viewers that negative news would become more and more frequent in the future, but still the magnitude of the controversial decisions took us by surprise. That being said, we understand Blizzard's motives. We understand why the developers have to lie and why they have resorted to this strategy. They are in a very difficult position and we will try to prove it to you. In our opinion, The main reason for this behavior lies in the monetization crisis. Yes, we have no official data on Blizzard's revenues, but we have plenty of circumstantial evidence.
Here's a summary table of Hearthstone's estimated revenue. We've collected this data over the years from different analytics sites. For the past few years, our only source has been sites that determine the effectiveness of mobile apps. For example, according to Sensor Tower's monthly reports, in 2021, the game earned $84 million on mobile platforms, of which the game earned more than half, $45 million, on iOS devices in China. The game's revenue in China on Android devices remains a mystery, but we can assume that to this should be added at least another $40 million. We do not know what percentage of these revenues remained in the hands of Blizzard, as in China the bulk of the profits were taken by NetEase, but the profit is incredible. Since 2016, the mobile market has become the main source of revenue for the game, but today the situation may have changed. Our subscribers predominantly shop on other platforms. You should realize that these are very conditional figures that are only suitable for displaying trends. For example, according to App Magic statistics, we can assume that Hearthstone will make much more money in 2021. In 2022, America imposed sanctions against Russia as the aggressor country that attacked Ukraine. Blizzard was forced to restrict access to in-game content purchases for players from Russia and Belarus. This was one of the most important regions for the game. In 2022, the game's revenue declined amid news that Blizzard was pulling out of China. App Magic and Sensor Tower published roughly the same statistics. The game's estimated revenue was reduced to $62 million. In 2023, Blizzard managed to slow down the decline, but due to the game's absence in China, the game's total revenue on mobile platforms only amounted to $30 million. 2023 was not a bad year for the game. A large number of cosmetic items made up for the drop in revenue, but did not solve the monetization crisis as a whole.
In other words, there are at least two significant factors that have had a tremendous impact on reducing the game's profits. Revenues cut almost 3 times. In addition to this, there is a hidden reason for the monetization crisis. The game is more loyal than ever before, which reduces the need to make a purchase. We assume that Hearthstone development costs are significantly higher compared to other card games. Based on this, the main task of management is to increase profits. After Microsoft bought Blizzard, there has been a lot of process optimization, employee layoffs, and an unprecedented string of terrible decisions. Most likely, Hearthstone's management was tasked with making the game more efficient by cutting development costs. But here's what consequences it gradually led to. According to preliminary data in the first half of the year, the estimated revenues suddenly dropped to $13 million. And this is despite the fact that there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that the audience of the game has increased over the previous year.
More details can be found in one of our previous videos. The return of the game to China will cover the failure, but will not solve the hidden monetization crisis and the consequences of lower support costs. If profits have started to decline sharply on mobile, then inevitably revenues have declined on other platforms.
Here's an example. As we expected, pre-orders of Perils and Paradise were the most failed in the game's history. Only 20% of our viewers made a purchase. The effectiveness of this offer among our community earned Blizzard only $17 per player. In fact, the effectiveness of pre-orders dropped by half compared to a similar Scholomance Academy expansion. And this happened amid a gradual increased interest in pre-orders over the past year. This is not a standard situation.
According to our estimates, during the pre-release and post-release period of Perils in Paradise, Blizzard missed at least $2 million on the mobile market compared to the same period last year, and this is the most modest assumption. We should add to that the lost revenue on PC and Mac. Extrapolating this trend to all platforms for 2 months, Blizzard could lose from $2 to $6 million.
The new strategy really had a huge impact on profits. Great anti-crisis management. Way to go.
It seems that the players decided to punish the game without any conspiracy. And this is a very dangerous precedent, which says that players are tired of boycotts, they are disappointed and become indifferent to the game's future. This time Blizzard shot themselves not in the foot but in the head. Does the lack of a cinematic or a theme board make such a huge difference?
I'll be honest, we haven't been able to pinpoint a specific cause of the disaster. Most likely it's a combination of factors, but the scandal with the weekly quests, lack of cinematics and the board definitely exacerbated the situation.
Hearthstone has attracted too much negativity over the past 6 months. On top of that, not all players like the increased power level in Standard, which is steadily approaching Wild. I can't say that Standard was in a crisis before the release of Perils in Paradise. I'm mostly satisfied with the state of affairs, but the format has changed a lot in the last few years and many players don't like the current form. This is truly a different Hearthstone. In turn, the developers could offer an alternative version of the standard format with some experimental restrictions aimed at reducing power creep or reducing luck factor. Twist could be a platform for this. Even a failed attempt at creating a different standard experience would have been far more useful than paid boards and pets. But the developers prefer to ignore the opinion of a large part of the community. The inaction of developers and an avalanche of negative innovations have tired the players. And now add to this an ambiguous new set and you get a cocktail of total disappointment. As a result, Perils in Paradise has every chance to go down in history as the worst expansion ever, since it is associated with failure. According to the HS replay counter, player interest in the new meta is lower compared to other periods in the last few years. In addition, the interest in Hearthstone on Twitch decreased sharply after the release of the expansion. Our audience is rather not satisfied with the new set. This is the first time we have seen indirect signs of a decline in interest in the game over a very long period of time.
If a game as a service wants to make money, it has to give players joy and fun. For their part, Blizzard didn't even try to sell us Perils in Paradise. Without a cinematic, players don't understand the context of the story. The lack of a theme board has no effect on gameplay, but it creates an atmosphere and is an immersive element, a very important symbol of each set. And main feature of Hearthstone was its ability to tell stories, which is a completely unique feature for the card game genre. The game had a great attention to detail and that made it really awesome. The adventures were a great way to increase the immersion effect, introducing players to new characters with clear motivation. Players have long been waiting for the release of new solo content that is not even planned by Blizzard, although the developers cynically state that they still continue to hear the voices of the community. Such seemingly insignificant things made Hearthstone a legendary game that turned the industry upside down. Yes, all of these elements are not key. If the new cards suck, cinematics, boards and adventures will not save the situation. But when the game itself is great, you are more likely to turn a blind eye to some minor failures that are inevitable in development. Moreover, you are more likely to recommend the game to a friend or make a purchase. If the developers randomly cut off piece after piece of the game, it naturally creates anxiety and a feeling that the game is dying and ultimately kills the game. Why would a player invest money in a game that feels bad?
You probably won't like my idea, but players should support their favorite game as a service with purchases, otherwise it will die naturally. Hearthstone monetization needs a new breath, that's a fact. It's not a normal situation that the game is popular, the audience is growing, but the income is falling. But this is Blizzard's fault. If we saw signs that the disappearance of boards and cinematics brought the company more money, we would not have made this video, since an increase in profits in a business indicates the right strategy. But if you believe the income statistics, Blizzard has achieved the opposite result. This means they are following the most stupid strategy.
I am a player who is not interested in cosmetics and it is unacceptable to me that Blizzard, by increasing the assortment in the store, cynically destroys familiar things that are an integral part of the game. I understand that for some players this is not a problem, but for me Hearthstone loses its uniqueness and this leads to the fact that I began to spend less time in the game.
It's time for the most interesting part. Blizzard is betting big on boards and pets to increase financial efficiency, although I haven't heard any players demand this. Does this idea have a commercial potential? I decided to investigate and collected 12 common offers for each expansion phase and, based on votes of our community, determined their financial efficiency in percentages. The most important source of profit are traditionally pre-orders. They make up almost 50% of subscribers' total expenses. All diamond bundles during the expansion phase are capable of bringing in a comparable profit with the Tavern Pass. Honestly, I completely missed this fact. Now it's clear why Blizzard took away our free diamond card for collecting the set. Pack bundles can bring in a lot of money. For example, only these two offers are comparable to the profit from selling Battlegrounds Battle Pass to our community. On average, income from 3D skins varies greatly, but a commercially successful portrait can generate 2% of the total profit on average. Cthulhu had an abnormal popularity. Regular bundles with portraits bring in less than 1/3%. And this is despite the fact that these indicators of the effectiveness of cosmetics are significantly overstated, since the calculations mostly ignore the purchase of regular and golden packs, arena tickets and numerous pack bundles. Thus, cosmetics can generate additional profit, but it is more of a bonus than the main source. At least our community largely ignores these offers. The increased number of portraits may indicate that Blizzard has redirected resources from creating voice lines for adventure bosses to replicas for ineffective skins, the profit from the sale of which is negligible. I have a question, dear viewers. Have any of you asked Blizzard to stop releasing new adventures in exchange for increasing the variety of portraits in the store? In the situation with the disappearance of free boards, management applies the same logic. In my opinion, the resources put into cosmetics are not commensurate with the financial results. Instead of focusing on improving the gameplay, we get a ton of cosmetics that have little financial impact. Based on this, it's hard to assume that new boards and pets will turn the situation around. Moreover, the main mistake is that in the pursuit of increasing profits by a few percent, the management is careless about the main source of income.
If our assumptions about the decline in profits are correct, then in the near future we will see more additional rewards and clumsy attempts to restore loyalty. Perhaps even management will make some adjustments to its strategy, or we will see new attempts at dialogue.
We were going to end this video with a very negative outlook, but one seemingly insignificant detail completely changed our view of the future of the game. We have our own unannounced concept for modernizing monetization in Hearthstone. We really believe in this idea and have been working on it for over a year. We will share it with you very soon. Unexpectedly for us, we have seen signs that Blizzard is going to implement a key part of our concept into the game. This means that they are ready for radical and very positive changes, and this opens a window of opportunity to implement our concept. We are convinced that Blizzard thinks in a similar direction to us. We really hope that as many players as possible will learn about our idea and the developers will be forced to comment on it and perhaps even implement it partially or completely. We believe that this has incredible potential, but we will reveal the details in the next few weeks, as this topic deserves a separate video and time to visualize. Therefore, we ask you to subscribe to our channel and, most importantly, hit the bell so as not to miss this video. We will need a big response and your help in spreading our ideas. We promise to surprise you.
Finally, the traditional question, what should Blizzard do to regain your trust? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls in the community tab.
Traditionally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.